Right, I'm going to record. Welcome to Invest. I did the clap again. Damn it.
Stop clapping. Jeez. I'm kidding.
Welcome to Investories, a podcast about real stories, real estate, and taking real action. Join hosts John Hooper and Kyle Robertson as they talk investing, mindset, and taking that first step. We all have a story. What's yours? The Investories Podcast.
Welcome to Investories Podcast. And this is show number 5 or 6 or 7, who knows, right? But we've got a really cool couple on. I sound like I'm a radio DJ from the 50s, old-timey. But we've got an awesome couple, the Bellishes. I know them through Facebook. We've conversed a lot, and they're super into syndication, but in a down-to-earth, non-scary, non-titans of business kind of way.
Yeah, they, I didn't know the Bellishes, and this is my first introduction with them. And you talk about a couple of really cool people, husband and wife team who had no experience in real estate whatsoever, jumped into it head first. They attempted to do the individual investor route, which a lot of people have done through BRRRRs, learned some very valuable lessons with it, and pivoted in their business in a way that allowed them to reduce their risk and also grow their business and really network and create a heck of a business plan, going forward. So they've got a lot of really, really good educational nuggets for everybody.
I think what's really interesting is the whole point around action, around sharing a vision and kind of shaping a future as well. So there's way more to it than just looking at numbers and trying to make some money. It's more of a kind of shared passion, a shared mission for that. So we go into all that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah, and they talk about there's some discussion in there about the husband and wife team type of things, and a lot of people listening, it's just natural when you've got a spouse who you spend so much time with that say that just one member of that husband wife team wants to be in real estate investing, it's going to bleed over into the conversations and into your daily life. And they kind of talk on that and what it was like to start this business together as a team, as opposed to one person doing it and trying to, not having to convince the other one, because they both had buy-in to this particular project. So it was good stuff.
Awesome. Let's listen to the episode.
Let's do it.
So I want to welcome to the podcast. I shouldn't clap my hands when I introduce people because it's a bit weird. But hey, we've got Christine and Danny Bellish, and they are Team Bellish, as I've got to know them, and that's kind of how I refer to you in any kind of form of communication, which is kind of cool. Like, you've got your brand, you're on Instagram. We connected on Facebook, and they're deep into the syndication world, which is certainly something I kind of want for my career, even though I'm in that kind of early fledgling state. And Kyle, I'm not sure if that's an area you've got knowledge of, or if that's something you're growing into, or...
Knowledge, yes. I haven't taken that step into syndication spaces, but I love I've got a lot of really close friends that are deep in the syndication space, and I love the industry, and I love the strategy that goes along with it. So I'm really excited to get into this and find out what you guys have to share with everybody.
Yeah, welcome to you both. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having us. It's hilarious that you're talking anecdotally about how you refer to us as the Bellish team. Our family does the same thing too. My dad literally calls me, and when I pick up the phone, he goes, "Bellish team."
I mean, if you send me a baseball cap with that on, I will wear it, and I won't be sorry about it.
So we did over the summer create a bunch of these branded beach towels for our investors when we threw a big investor party. And we've just kind of really built the brand. We come from a marketing, advertising, branding type of background, and we know how important it is to build a brand. And a lot of it has to do with, not really branded tchotchkes, but having that sort of name or company name be synonymous with things, at least for us, like, friendship, reliability, transparency, things like that. So that when you say the Bellish team, it means a lot to us, and hopefully it will to some other people too.
I love that. So let's get into it. Let's start with that. You kind of alluded to your origin story then. Talk us through how you got to where you've got to.
Sure. So I guess I'll take that, and I know Christine will chime in too, but obviously Christine and I are a husband and wife team, right? And I know she's sitting right next to me, but at the same time, she is truly my other half and my partner in this through and through. And we wouldn't be where we are if it wasn't for the two of us really playing our own individual roles and really doing whatever it takes to get to where we want to be. So our origin story really started in the New York City advertising business, which is where we met. So we have this background in corporate America in New York City and advertising, working for some of the largest companies in the world and creating advertising and marketing campaigns and partnerships with some of the other biggest brands in the world, across auto and technology and pharmaceuticals. And really, that's where we got a lot of our experience. And what we really decided was that, we were part of the rat race like everybody else. And while we were doing really well in those jobs, probably like a lot of your listeners, we wanted something more for ourselves. And we wanted to be able to take more control over our time and our future and our wealth. So we knew that real estate makes 90% of millionaires, and we wanted to venture into that space. So we started by getting our real estate licenses in New York and New Jersey, and dabbling there.
And I'm just going to interject quickly. So the reason why we got our licenses is because we never bought or sold any properties ourselves before. So we knew that we were interested in getting into the space, but I think like a lot of people, you just don't really know where to get started. And we didn't even know how the process worked. So we were still working our full-time advertising jobs in Manhattan, and we were going to get our real estate licenses. We were taking classes every Wednesday after work together. And we did for a while in the beginning, we worked with buyers and sellers to help list and purchase properties just so that we could get the hang of how the process works. But yeah, the reason why we really wanted to get that experience so that we could purchase properties ourselves as investors. So we got a few transactions under our belts. And then we had access to the MLSs in our area. So we started looking for deals ourselves, which took forever because, I think it's also like a paralysis analysis thing where, you run the numbers, you educate yourself, you listen to podcasts, you read books, you go on Bigger Pockets, like you try to educate yourself as much as possible, but actually pulling the trigger to like buy your first property, I think, it's a daunting task. So we finally did pull the trigger and buy our first investment property here locally in New Jersey in 2019. And it was a 2-family gut renovation project, 100 years old. So that was like our first real step into like the real estate investing world in 2019.
You touched on a big piece right there, which I think a lot of listeners can relate to. It's not knowing how to get started in the real estate space, because not everybody, but a lot of people, especially anybody interested in real estate, thinks, I know this is the right thing to do. And I can relate to this because this is the way I started as well. I know that this is the way a lot of people are made into millionaires. Everybody wants to be a millionaire, right? So they start to think, what do I do? How do I do this? Well, I don't like reading books. I don't want to read a book. Oh, I don't have enough time to listen to a podcast. Well, there's another introduction you can do there and also make money at the same time, which is get your real estate license. Realtors don't have to be full-time. There are companies out there that will allow people to be real estate brokers and do things part-time as well. And a lot of people do that and are very successful, but it gets you this amazing education. And I'm sure you guys learned a whole lot during that process of how transactions work, how to network, how to build. You're already in advertising. So building a brand is something that comes fairly second nature to you guys by this point, but you had the opportunity to build that network, that base, which is so super important to being successful as an investor, because it's all about who you know, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And to Christine's point, obviously we learned that contractual process, which is, as anybody who's bought and sold real estate before, it's cumbersome, right? But the most important part of that journey was meeting lenders, understanding financing, understanding creative financing, and different types of loans and loan options. Because once you get into real estate investing, utilizing leverage becomes one of the most important assets in your tool belt. So understanding how that works from start to finish is hugely important. And then, of course, other brokers who are going to end up helping you find deals in the future, insurance brokers, and everything in between, right?
So inspectors, like the network that we built, to your point, in having that experience was definitely very helpful and very enlightening to us. And I think it also helped keep us more disciplined when we were searching for ourselves also, because it's a totally different experience when somebody is searching for a home where they're going to live versus when you're buying an investment property, right? Like, we have to stay focused on the numbers as much as we fall in love with something, we have to stay focused on the numbers. And I think in helping to try to talk people through, their wants and their needs and their nice to haves and all of that when they were, looking to buy a home for their own to live in, there's a lot more compromises that come into play when it comes to budget and that sort of stuff, right? Like, you start out with a budget and it quickly grows as your wants and needs list grows. But when you're an investor, you really need to be diligent in staying in your lane and staying focused to make sure that the numbers make sense first and foremost.
And I think that's, sorry, go ahead, Danny.
I was just going to say, and then, obviously we got a great education as acting as agents, but it really wasn't until we bought that first BRRRR property, that 100-year-old BRRRR, where we had a complete gut renovation project, that we really got a first-rate education. And I don't know if I could say this here, ass kicking, when it came to learning and understanding what real estate investing, at least for hands-on active investors, is really all about. And, once you start dealing with contractors and managing projects and managing timelines and managing budgets from contractors and subcontractors and, township guidelines and permits, wow, that's where it can really get a little bit hairy if you don't have the right experience. So we ended up, unfortunately, working with a nightmare contractor, as
who hasn't.
Everybody who is invested in real estate, has probably come across. A 3-month project turned into 9 months, and we went about 30% over budget. To make a long story short, things did end up working out okay. We did a cash out refinance, and it is filled with great tenants right now.
And we're cash flowing at 12%, and we more than doubled the equity that we had in the property after we did the cash out refi, which is awesome. But, to Danny's point, through this process, we kind of learned like what we're good at, like where we excel. And I think after having that experience and realizing the time that it took us to make that return, which again, like we were very happy with, but coming from the corporate world as high income earners in Manhattan, our time is worth a lot of money. So for it to take us 9 months to come up with this return, we really started to like weigh, like, is this worth the return that we're getting for the amount of time and effort that we had to put in? And that's really what brought us to syndication.
There's so much to unpack there. And I think there's a couple of things for me, which is one, I too have, we just acquired our first short-term rental, and the numbers were really at the forefront, and not kind of getting wooed or kind of falling in love with the property, but really looking at it as a business venture. So that's really interesting. And I think that's one of my biggest tips is don't kind of make the numbers fit because you love a place. Be confident in your numbers and kind of, make decisions based on that. I think the other thing that's really interesting is the BRRRR strategy gets thrown around a lot, and the difficulty is often kind of varnished over. And I think that's really interesting to be very open and honest. And it's great that it worked. But I think that there's complexity there often that can sometimes just be.
I don't know, John. I've seen HGTV. And,
yeah, that's what we thought when we were getting into it too. I was like, all of these people have done it before us. Like we can definitely make it work. Like, no,
I don't know if I believe you there.
Wait, I'm gonna go for my own HGTV show. I've got the perfect name. So.
Nice.
Brits and Mortar. I like it.
Oh,
actually, really like that.
Good.
That's not the first time you thought about that.
No, I thought of it. It keeps me up at night.
I love it.
That's
but
great.
If you think that BRRRRing on a 2-unit multifamily is complex, what we're essentially doing in our syndications are BRRRRing 290-unit apartment complexes. It's the same concept and same theory behind it. It's just on a much, much larger scale.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. That was a great segue, by the way, because we're going to talk a lot about your I guess the Bellish team in general and how you guys do your your GP stuff and all of your syndication stuff. But the main question I have is, you got your taste of what it was like to own a property. Did you say it was a duplex, that first one that you bird?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what led you to, instead of using your own money and doing these things as a solo investors, if that's not an oxymoron, I guess, but what led you guys into that realm of wanting to raise money and start doing these larger deals? How did you make that transition, and why?
So I think it really was that first experience that we had. So, and again, we're like full transparency, we're open books here. So in our area, when we purchased the duplex, because it was a multifamily and it was investment property, we had to put 25% down for conventional financing. So that ended up being around 60 grand almost in New Jersey. And then our renovation project, like we mentioned many times, went over budget, and we spent $130,000 renovating it. And we paid for all of that out of our pocket from our savings. Like that was our savings. And we sunk all of our own money into that project. We didn't use hard money loan, construction loan, or anything like that. So we really realized that, it can get expensive. And we did learn about finding like other creative financing options after we worked on this project. But we basically put over $200,000 of our own capital on the line for this project when we had zero experience doing this before. Right. So we're glad that it ended up working out when all things were said and done. But we kept looking for projects in New Jersey. We couldn't make the numbers work. Again, we're being responsible about running the numbers and making sure that we're being diligent about that. And we were getting frustrated. So we actually ended up going to a meetup in Manhattan that was about buying multifamilies out of state. And we wanted to, we were dipping our toe in that water, because as nice as it would be to buy more properties in our backyard, we understand, one, New Jersey is not a landlord friendly state. Okay, so first and foremost that. Secondarily, it's very, very, very expensive. Not only is the purchase price super expensive, but the taxes here are insane. So, and anybody who knows, who's run numbers and done underwriting to try to buy properties, the taxes can make or break your deal. So we wanted to learn more about buying multifamilies out of state. We thought maybe, in more landlord friendly states, in places where the taxes were lower, there might be a lower barrier to entry purchase price wise. So initially we were going to this meetup because we did want to buy more properties ourselves. But we just didn't really see how we could scale it in New Jersey because it was so expensive. But when we went to this meetup, we thought it was going to be about buying duplexes, 2 to 4 units, out of state. And what it ended up actually being about was syndication. So for us, it honestly was yes, it was right place, right time. We put ourselves in a situation to learn about this, but we honestly didn't even know that it was going to be about syndication when we went there.
And we had never really heard about syndication up until that point. So when the keynote speaker was there talking about syndication, and for any of your listeners that don't really know what syndication is, it's basically when people pool their money and resources in order to buy larger, more expensive property, right? So when we talk about multifamily specifically, these experienced investors and operators, they'll raise money from totally passive investors, and they'll use those funds for the down payment, the closing costs, the renovations and reserves, and everybody shares in the equity of the deal, and they make money. They make returns based on the cash flows and the ultimate sale proceeds, or even a refinance along the way. Mm-hmm. So he was talking to us, and we're in the audience, and he's talking about some of the returns that they offer for their syndications. And they were bigger than what we were getting for our 9-month nightmare project that we had just worked on.
Sleepover, put $200,000 of our own cash on the line for.
And he was basically talking about these returns, and it almost seemed too good to be true, right? We were like, what? We could just put money in, not lift a finger, rely on experts to do it, and they'll just pay us a return like mailbox money, right? And we were kind of like, I don't know, this seems a little sketchy. So we decided to do our due diligence. So we basically did like 9 months of total due diligence on this particular operator. And we looked at his track record. We looked at his past deal markets. We looked at his strategies. We spoke to some of his investors. We spoke to his attorney. We wanted to make sure that if we were going to make an investment like this, that it was going to be with someone that we really felt comfortable with and trusted, and was an open book to us. He made himself available to us literally 24/7. And we asked him every question under the sun.
I tell you what, anybody listening to this, stop it for a second and rewind for probably about the last 2 minutes and listen to what Danny just said over again. Most important thing that you can do when you're putting your own capital at risk, even as a passive investor, as an LP, which is that passive investor in a syndication deal, is to make sure you're vetting your operators. You want to find somebody who's been there and done that and has gone full circle and really knows what they're doing, because you're trusting them with a large piece of oftentimes it's a $50,000 minimum, depending on what kind of syndication you're doing here. And that's a lot of money for a lot of people. So what Danny was just talking about is super important. Make sure that you're doing all of your due diligence when you're looking into different operators of syndications to figure out if you're putting your money in the right place, and talking to other investors, even talking to their attorney. I mean, that's going the next step. That's next level due diligence right there. I love it. I love that you guys said that.
Well, for us in particular, we're aggressive and we're ambitious, right? And we know that we want to make this our life, right? Like this, it was important for us to not only vet this particular operator, but also understand, other people's perspective and what role they play within the syndication and what their feelings were, to help round out our own perspective.
And I think just adding to that, one of the big things I experience in business is the whole concept of transparency and kind of being able to be open and ask questions and interrogate. And I think that's really important. The fact you spoke to investors is super cool that they were open to that, and it should be that way. If someone's a closed book and says, actually, no, I don't want you to speak to other investors, that's a massive red flag. And I say that as someone who does invest in, I actually invest in first liens rather than pure syndication. But really, really interesting.
For now.
Right. Until we become your best friends. But no, I think 100%. And I think, in talking to a lot of investors ourselves, what we hear from a lot of people is that they don't want to give up control. And I can definitely relate to that. And Danny can definitely relate to that. But I think once you have the opportunity to meet somebody who has so much experience, and you learn from somebody so much, and you do ask them these questions and they have answers to all of your questions, and they are transparent and they are an open book, we kind of just flipped the way that we were thinking about things. And we realized truly that we had bet on ourselves, and we put a lot of our own money on the line betting on ourselves. And yes, of course, we have all the confidence in the world in ourselves, and we know ourselves, and we know that we're going to do whatever it takes to get the job done. But the reality is we could have lost a lot of money on that first project. We had no experience. We didn't really know what we were doing. And yes, we worked hard to make it happen. But when you're getting involved in a syndication, especially if you're working with somebody who does have an awesome track record of success, you're paying an expert to make you money, basically, right? And you can think of it in a lot of different ways. You go to the dentist for your dental work, you pay an electrician to do your electrical work, right? You're not gonna do all of these things yourself. And I think when we started to kind of just flip our thinking to say, we just put all this money on the line betting on ourselves. This guy has already worked with almost 1,000 investors, and he's been doing this for more than a decade, and he controls over $350 million worth of assets. You're doing something right. This guy probably knows more than we know at this point. So yes, we definitely educated ourselves and we did our due diligence, but we got to the point where we were like anything, nothing's guaranteed. You're always taking a level of risk, but I think as long as you educate yourself and you make an informed decision at that time, you have to kind of take the plunge.
So we became passive investors, right? We decided that we wanted to make an investment with this particular operator. In one of the deals was in Texas and the other one was in Ohio, right? And after we made that investment, we just started getting checks every quarter, check after check after check. And we were like, holy crap, this is real. This actually works. like we're onto something. And we kind of looked at each other and we said, all right, we thought our strategy was going to be, let's buy 2 to 4 doors at a time, let's build and build and build. But that's kind of also not the type of people that we are. We are about aggressive growth, and we want to get to where we want to be as quickly as possible in doing it in a sound, strategic, and disciplined way, even if that is a little bit contrary. So what we said was, this is the path, man. If we want to scale our business, this is what we need to be doing. So, something that we had learned from our corporate experience, and something that we had done throughout our entire careers, really is go to the people who are most experienced, offer as much value as humanly possible to them, and try to become their best friend. And I will ride those coattails till the end of time. So what we really did was we took our advertising, marketing, branding, content creation, and investor relations experience that we had from our corporate world, right? Because we didn't have any real large multifamily or syndication experience. And we went to this operator that we invested with, and totally without really speaking to him about it first, we evaluated his entire business and we wrote him a full marketing strategy plan and investor relations guidebook that he could use for his entire business in order to get more investors, get more deals, have better relations with those individuals, and build his brand bigger and better. And basically presented it to him. He was crazy receptive to it. And we told him that we would help him implement that to its fullest in exchange for real estate syndication, mentorship, and the opportunity to partner in the future. So we basically did an entire year of pro bono free consulting for him.
And we invested with him passively 2 times. So we put our money where our mouth was, and we were also working for him for free.
And so we did all of that work, and it came to a point where we basically said, where we built a close friendship with him at that point and a great rapport. And he saw us as reliable and diligent and savvy and really understanding the business and wanting to get our hands dirty. And we said, hey, what do you think about letting us GP with you on one of your next deals? And he said, absolutely, let's do it. I have a 291 unit project I'm closing right now in Cleveland, Ohio. Why don't you come in with me? And we were like, holy shit.
So I actually asked the question, and Danny was sitting in the other room, and his response was like, yeah, 100%, absolutely. And then the second half of that was, what do you think about raising $1 million? Meanwhile, we had never raised any money from anyone ever before. Yes, we did work in advertising, and we sold large partnerships, and we worked on large programs, but that was coming from like marketing budgets from some of the largest brands in the world, right? It wasn't people taking money out of their own personal pockets and investing it with us. So we did say yes. We didn't know exactly what we were getting ourselves into, but we made it happen.
So I want to interject there. There's something really interesting that you touched upon, and it's something that is close to Kyle's heart, I think, which is the adding value to people and to relationships and to conversations. And there's probably a lot of people out there that just kind of hop on people and say, hey, can you tell me everything about X or Y? And I think, it's a business, but it's also really a kind of relationship business where it's all about getting on with people, adding value, discussion. And we talked about it on several episodes about the Facebook groups you can add to conversations and all that good stuff, but there needs to be that kind of connectivity with people. It's a people first kind of business, I think.
Yeah, and at the same time, just to even just to build off what you're saying, John, and I think this is coming from a post I put on Facebook the other day where it was I was a little bit frustrated because I guess when you put your feelers out there and you do a lot of networking, you start to meet other people, which is great. It's the whole point, right? But then you get certain people who just they want your time and they want endless amounts of it, and it gets really difficult when it's just one message after another, a phone call. Hey, can we hop on a call? Hey, can we hop on a call? I need you to tell me how to do this. And you're just sitting there like, oh my gosh, there are not enough hours in the day to do something like this, And so it's really important for everybody out there that is listening. You got to think, okay, if I'm going to ask somebody for something, what can I give in return? It's got to be a two-way street. Otherwise, you're going to burn out that relationship. And then that person's going to stop answering. It's just the natural tendency of people when their time is taken up at such a high level that you don't offer something back in return. They're going to find some way to spend their time where it makes more sense, and maybe not on that person that keeps asking for asking over and over again for stuff. Yeah. So if you guys want to touch on that just a little bit, I mean, you kind of already did, but do you guys talked about offering value back in return and also coming onto their GP team and now raising capital for this guy. So that's the value you offered in return. So how did that go?
Yeah, so I'll just touch on the offering value thing first. So, I mean, listen, we know that needs to be a part of our business if we want to grow, especially if we're venturing into new spaces that we're not totally familiar with, right? Everybody needs to look inward and say, what can I do of value, without going to the other person and saying, hey, what can I do for you, and putting the onus on them, right? You have to come to the table. And there's a few things about it, right? Number one, like, be ridiculously thoughtful, right? Be over the top thoughtful and really think about what they could do to benefit, and just do it, right? Do it.
I love it. Absolutely.
And for us, like, we were coming at it from a unique position because we had invested with him passively also. So we got the experience that his investors got. So like, we got the inside information by actually, putting our money where our mouth is and investing with him, like, and us coming from a really, really high-paced corporate New York 24/7, you're always on, like, responsiveness situation, like, that's where we were adding our value and just saying, like, if you want money from people in our area, like, this is the way that you need to go about, like, speaking with these people at this high net worth. These high net worth individuals are going to expect you always on all the time. And the cool part about it was he genuinely took our advice into consideration, and we had that level of mutual respect. He went out and he hired a full-time investor relations person as a member of his team, and he never had that before. So
we wrote him the full job description and exactly what he should post, and he went out and he utilized it, to Christine's point. So it showed us that he valued our time and our expertise also, which went a long way. But I will say a couple of things. So first is, he's not the only person that we did this with. We did this with a few other syndicators too, because like, this is what we wanted to do. We wanted to reach for the top and provide as much value as we possibly could, believing in ourselves and believing in our skill set, and grow quickly, right? Like, we don't want to learn everything the hard way necessarily. We really kind of never had qualms about reaching as far up to the top as possible and asking for the things that we want. And I think those are two lessons also that we've been able to learn throughout our career, is you don't get what you don't ask for, which is hugely important, but you do have to earn that ask, right? And reach to the top, right? Like, why, find somebody else who may have closed a few deals and assets and is jet shopping right now? That's what's important to me. So that's the way that we're going to get to where we want to be as quickly as possible.
So one thing I've noticed, and this is this conversation, but our previous conversations, is the synchronization between the two of you. And one thing we've talked about on this show is a few times is the kind of buy-in from your nearest and dearest, and how important that is. So my wife's from a background working for the county. She's never invested. She's never thought about investing. And together we've kind of gone through the education and really kind of bought into sharing kind of, oh, this is where we want to be. This is how we want our lives to be. And this is kind of the route to get there. Can you talk us through kind of those conversations and your goal setting and how you approach all that kind of stuff?
It's so funny. We have these conversations amongst ourselves constantly, and I'm sure you, with your wife as your partner, also, you can't stop yourself from having these conversations constantly. But, and I'm not trying to be cheesy about saying this, but the truth is, like, I would not be where I am today without him. And I think anybody can say that about their partner, right? Like, things happen in life for a reason, but I really don't know that I would have had the confidence to go an alternate path than what I was taught growing up if I didn't have the strength and the support and the confidence of my partner. And I think, you know, some people come into these and I hate to even call it like an alternate path now, right? But what we were taught growing up is, you know, you get good grades, you go to good college, you get a good job, and you stay there for 30 years. And like, then maybe one day you get to retire. Like, that just sounds miserable. And he has never been somebody that would ever accept that from the time that we met. He was always in our corporate career also finding ways to carve his own path, even in the corporate world, and making it, earning his place. But he never, like, he beats to the rhythm of his own drum. He wasn't like a follower. He wasn't like just falling in line like in the corporate world like most people do. He, as a salesperson, was always like leading the sales team. And you know, when you're performing to that level, you kind of get to make the rules a little bit more, right? So he always was doing that. And for me, he really taught me to think outside of the box, starting in our corporate career. Like, I didn't think to ask for raises. Like, I didn't think to have those tough conversations. Like, I felt uncomfortable talking about money. Like, I felt like if I was working hard, somebody should just recognize it. And like, you know, I should just get paid more because like I deserve it and I work hard and somebody will recognize it. And he was like, no, that's not how it works. That's not how it's going to happen. Like, you need to go in there. You need to explain XYZ reasons why you deserve this raise, why you deserve this money, and you need to go after it. So I think we started that journey together before we started our business together. Like, we already like were forming that kind of mentality and that like go after what you want in life sort of mantra. Yeah, exactly. But as far as like our partnership goes, I think it's awesome because we are both good at so many things. But it's, and we're good at a lot of the same things, but we also kind of fall into like our own categories. Like, there are things that he likes doing more than I like doing. That doesn't mean that I'm not, it means I don't want to. Like, he's the social butterfly. He's best friends with everyone. He's the mayor. Like, people literally call him this, right? And in person too, but it takes more effort and energy to like get me out of my shell and like talk to new people versus him. So like, that's one example of kind of how we fall into like our own categories. Whereas like me, I like running the numbers. I like to write our emails. I manage our social media posts. So like the more tedious tasks, like for my OCD, like I'm good at handling those types of things.
Yeah, she's the perfectionist and I'm kind of like the more impactful but sporadic action taker, you know?
Sure. Kind of like a visionary and integrator setup is kind of what you guys have going on there, which is wonderful. And I'd almost want to bring this back to day one real quick, because my wife and I, same as John and his wife, we do invest together. In fact, she's taken more of a passive role in this as time has gone on, and I've kind of taken over from there. Back to day one though, were you guys always on board 100%, I guess 50-50 on day one, whenever you decided to jump into the world of real estate investing? Was there some convincing that had to happen one way or the other, or were you both on the same page from day one? Were you the unicorn of husbands and wives?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, listen.
Out. I got to know this story.
No, oh God. When you spend every single day, you know, together and you're developing a business together from scratch, first of all, you talk about it nonstop, right? So there's excitement, there's fears, there's successes, there's failures, there's every day there are small wins and small losses that add up to hopefully more wins than losses, right? But, and that's even from a mentality perspective too, right? Like, we all get sort of bogged down in certain ideas and certain thoughts. And especially when you're venturing into a space that you've never been in before, there's apprehension all over the place. It was Christine's idea to buy our first duplex in the market that we bought it in. And I'm from Queens, New York, and we live in New Jersey, and this was a beach town in New Jersey that she was very familiar with and I was not. And when sometimes you drive around these kind of B, C class type of areas, if you don't know it integrally, upside down and inside and out, you could have a certain perspective or certain judgment about it. And I think that's what I had. And I was proven wrong after 3 years. I know that area so well now and know of all of the opportunity that's there and even still to come. So I was proven wrong, but I definitely gave her a lot of slack for wanting to move forward with that. But I think ultimately it comes down to trust, right? And when you trust one another and someone has a really strong feeling about something, you gotta trust your partner just like you would in any other type of business setting. And without trust, you really don't have much. So we use our trust in each other in a lot of different areas of our business.
And I think just to get back to like your initial question about were we always on the same page, the answer is no, we're not always on the same page. And when we were getting started, no, we were not always on the same page either. It took a million conversations, right, to really get to the point where we were taking the plunge.
We also didn't exactly know those roles that Christine was talking about earlier, right? Like now we've sort of figured out what those roles are and they make a lot more sense. But before we were stepping on each other's toes all the time.
Yeah. And I think another point to mention too is that Danny still is working full-time in a W-2 job. And that has given us a level of comfort and stability to allow me to step away and make this my full-time job. So Danny basically has 2 full-time jobs. He has a W-2 job, and then he has another job where he spends all of the rest of his not free time doing, right? For us, I think that gave us the confidence. So we did have to cut back on our lifestyle to some degree, for me to step away. But at the same time, we ran the worst case scenarios through our head, and the worst case scenarios weren't that bad, right? And I think you hear this a lot when people talk about it. It's like, if the worst case scenario is that this doesn't work out and then we both have to go back to working full time and advertising again, like, well, we were doing that anyway. Like, I think we just got to the point where we really just said YOLO, and we were like, this is our one life. You only live once. Like, we're going to kick ourselves one day if we don't try, and we'll regret not trying. So I think that's really where we came together and where we landed on it. But yeah, like there were many, many, many conversations that went into that decision. And there are still many conversations every day that go into us working together as a team.
I think a lot of that has to do with the ever evolving nature of the business too, right? Like if you would have asked us a year ago about if we're going to have 585 units under our belt and be involved in syndication and raising millions of dollars, like I would have thought you were crazy, right? Like, but that's how our business goes. And you kind of have to evolve together and make those big decisions together that you're going to venture into this new space and do it head on.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. And I think what you touched upon is something we've discussed, which is the kind of taking on your lifestyle and assessing what's important to you longer term rather than the kind of short term gratification. And that's something that I've become more and more tuned into as I've got older in life. You know, in my 20s, it was all about, status through stuff. And now it's kind of less so. So I think that's really, really interesting and something we can all kind of look inward on.
Yeah, I agree. And that's like all we're thinking about is like, what would our 5-year from now or 10-year from now self wish that we were doing today? Would they wish that you just busted your butt and did this thing? Or would they wish that you flew out to Ohio and made yourself a part of this deal? Would they wish that you stood in front of 20 New Jersey business owners and pitched your syndication to them, even though it was scary as hell and they all looked like Italian mafia, dons? But you do what you got to do. Like ultimately what we've learned in this business is you got to do whatever it takes. And you have to put winning and this process and this business above everything, from ego to, being scared to, going to a party or going on vacation. You have to put it above everything for a certain number of years and you'll be happy about it for the rest of your life.
Absolutely. And I feel like, to get philosophical, failure Failure is probably the biggest, that's fear, really. Everybody thinks that, oh crap, I can't do this. So what if I fail? And Christine touched on a really interesting thing where you talk about, well, okay, say you fail. What happens? You just go back and do what you were doing before. Yeah, it's going to hurt. Nobody wants to fail, right? I got a sign on my wall that says failure is an option. And the fact of the matter is, it's the best educator out there. Now, we don't plan to fail. Well, we plan for failure, but we don't plan to fail, And failure it's a necessary part of life to make us better 100% of the time. And it's okay. It happens. And when you do that, you know how not to do that the next time. So being, standing on the edge of that cliff thinking, well, crap, what if my chute doesn't open? Yeah, but if I jump off this cliff, it's going to be a hell of a lot of fun, So what do you say we try it and see what happens? That's that one life mentality that Christine was talking about a little bit ago that I absolutely love. We get one shot at this. Here pretty soon, we're going to be old and decrepit, not able to take care of ourselves. And I want to lay in bed and think, all right, well, I was a badass when I was alive. That was pretty cool. I'd totally do that again. I don't want to look back and think, yeah, well, that kind of sucked. I probably could have done better. I'll probably feel that way anyways. I could have done. Everybody should be able to, feel like they could do better. But I love that mentality. That's huge, and that's the kind of mentality that allows you to keep growing. So good on you guys for that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's also like it's taken on a new life form now too, because and I'll sort of round out the rest of that syndication story too, but like now what we're doing is we're introducing friends and family and close loved ones to opportunities for them to invest in and for them to be financially free and for them to make passive income and for them to have more of whatever it is that they want in life through investing in syndication, right? So I'll round out that story. So we had our first deal. Our partner came to us and said, can you guys raise $1 million? We kind of were nervous about that.
We were like, we'll try. And he was like, and the best part though about this, and this tells you who he is. He was like, I have no doubt that you guys are going to do it. And me, like being an overanalyzer was like, okay, but what if we don't though? Like, are you going to hate us? Like, I don't want to ruin our relationship. Like, this is really important to us. Like, what's the worst case scenario? He's like, I really believe that you guys are going to do this, but the worst case scenario is you try as hard as you can and, you can owe me down the line. Like that's what it was. It was a handshake agreement. Like it's technically you can't pay somebody for raising money on a deal. Like that's not allowed. So
our percentage is carved out in our GP before we raise a single dollar. So it's not tied to how much we raise.
So if we raise 3 million, we would still get the same percentage, right?
Or if we raise 300K, right? Yeah. So to make a long story short, we reached out to literally everybody that we've ever met in our entire life.
Not exactly.
And, we implemented what we know are some best practices, plus what we learned from being LPs and passive investors ourselves. We were a total open book. We educated people, our friends and family, and we ended up raising 1.5 million for that deal.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Our partner was super happy, and we had 2 partners on that deal. They were super happy and immediately basically rolled us into the next deal, which was 293
just outside of Cleveland in Parma, Ohio. And we ended up raising $1.5 million for that deal. And now we have most recently, with one of our partners, started a fund for what are called net lease assets. So it's a little bit of a different asset class, but it's essentially your local dollar store like Dollar General, pharmacy like Walgreens, auto parts store like AutoZone. And it's these freestanding single tenant net lease buildings that come with these long-term lease agreements with, let's say, Walgreens or Dollar General. They have built-in rent increases, and a lot of them have these corporate guarantees, right? So if that store in particular goes dark, corporate will literally write you a check for the remainder of the lease, even if it's 5 or 10 years. And the best part is also what net lease really means is that the tenant actually covers a lot of the expenses normally associated with real estate ownership. So not only do they pay you rent, but they cover the taxes, they cover the insurance, they cover a lot of the maintenance. So it's kind of a rinse and repeat situation. So when you're talking about risk mitigation during times of high inflation or, economic volatility like we're seeing in the markets, the stock markets and the crypto markets, This is a hedge against all of that, and a great way for not only our investors to have stable, predictable cash flow, but for us to be able to diversify our portfolio, even within real estate, with stable and predictable cash flow from these, high credit worthy, nationally recognized tenants.
Yeah, I love that. I love that model altogether. Triple N or triple net leases, I guess, is what most people call them, is kind of the pinnacle of what a lot of investors are trying to get to. It's much more hands off, and like you said, the expenses are so much lower on the ownership side. So yeah, that's good stuff.
I think we have to have a whole episode on Triple N, because it's something I've looked at when I've been in my scattergun, look at every kind of piece of real estate possible. So perhaps we can get you back on to talk the intricacies of Triple N. I know Kyle knows a little bit about it.
I think what the reality is like, you never think like real estate is a passion. Like everybody talks about like follow your passion, right? But like, I think the reality is like things become your passion, right? Like this business has become our passion, and we're happy to talk about it to anyone about anything. And that's just like what it's come to. And I think why we've found success, and not only that, but why our investor pool has grown this large, and it's investors of all different professions, right?
Yeah, I think for us too, like, and this is gonna sound so cheesy and cliche, but when we were working in advertising, we were both really good at it, but I didn't really care like about what I was doing. And now I have the opportunity to help my family and my friends, and like have these conversations with them that nobody ever had with me growing up. And that's not blaming anybody. That's just saying like, nobody knew about this. Everybody did the best that they could. I was taught to save money. I wasn't taught how to invest anything. Like my parents, we lived paycheck to paycheck for like a lot of my upbringing. I never wanted for anything, but we didn't have anything extra either. And I think that there also was growing up, like something about hard work. And I totally believe in hard work, but it's like, if you're not working really, 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 really hard, like then you're lazy. Like, no, if you find a smarter way to do something and you can make money in your sleep, like that, right? Like, what are we here for? I'm not put on this earth only to work. Like I'm put on this earth because I want to enjoy my life. Time that I can spend with my family. I want to be able to go on vacations with my friends and my family. And I think that being able to share that, like build that with my husband first and foremost, but also like help our entire family and friends group, like build this all together, is really cool. And that's, I think, to Danny's point, it's not that like I'm so passionate about like, C-class apartments or like triple net dollar stores. It's I'm excited about wealth building and financial freedom in my life and in the lives of the people that we love the most.
Awesome. I really like that. So I'm conscious of your time, and I'm always conscious of Kyle's time.
You are
gives me a hard time for it. What's next for Team Bellish?
Yeah, so it's a great and wonderfully loaded question. But what we're really trying to do now is focus on growing the fund first and foremost, and continuing to grow the brand and meet new people, right? Networking and participating and sharing our experience. I think because we have kind of done a lot in this last year or so, I think we want to help people understand how they can either follow in those footsteps if they decide that they want to be active, or educate people who don't want to be active in real estate and how they could participate without managing or owning property and dealing with tenants, termites, and toilets, the 3 T's, right? Like, we have investors of every walk of life in every profession in different parts of the world. Everybody from surgeons and doctors, attorneys, financial advisors. We have a private jet pilot. We have a Navy SEAL who's stationed in Dubai. We have, so many investors at this point that all benefit from this, even though they don't want to do it full time. So I think what we're trying to get to is helping to spread the word that this syndication stuff is real,
Mm-hmm.
and it's here, and it's happening all over the country. And you know, you don't have to live your life by traditional and conventional thinking that, you know, for better or for worse, that we were all sort of brought up to think and feel.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's good stuff. And, you know, for those of you listening that want to get a little bit of education on syndications, highly recommend the Bellish team. And they're more than happy to talk it over with you guys and the different options that they offer through their business as well. And so that being said, Christine, and if you guys could just let us know how to get in touch with you, so all of our listeners can get in touch with you on, you know, whether it's your website, Facebook, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so we are super active on social. If you want to look us up on Instagram, it's at the Bellish Team. That's our website too, www.thebellishsteam.com. You can email us. It's just our first name at thebellishsteam.com. So I'm Christine at the Bellish Team. Danny is Danny at the Bellish Team. And Danny really is the most open book of all. So it's funny because the last time we got asked this question, he was straight up like, text me, call me, like, I don't care. So
we just really are, we like making friends, right? Like that's part of what I love most about this industry is like everybody's of the same mindset, right? You're only talking to like-minded people, and we just want to make friends. We want to make this fun, right? It's not only about making money, like Christine said. Let's have some fun. Let's have a drink. Let's have a good time. So my number is 917-617-0056. Call me, text me. Let's chat real estate. Let's chat baseball. Let's chat whatever, and let's just have a good time with this.
Awesome.
Love it.
That's I think that's our first phone number on the show, John. What do you think?
It is, yeah. Thank you very much. It's very gracious. And Danny is extremely gracious in answering my messages about stupid questions about nonsense and also pestering me for Zoom links when we're recording in a couple of hours as well. So I appreciate the thoroughness.
Yes.
Yep. That's part of communication, right?
Yeah.
We're on top of it.
We appreciate you guys having us too, though.
And you guys have a great podcast going. And for all you guys who are listening, continue to listen to these guys. They're on the right path. They want to talk to people who know what they're talking about that can help you. And we're just grateful to be a part of it.
Yeah, I think we've positioned ourselves as serious investors, but casual podcast hosts.
I like it. What a good tagline.
We like casual. Hey, that's actually really good. We should add that to the
casual
tagline. Yeah, for the opening. That's good.
Yeah, but listen, that's how you're going to connect with people, right? You don't need all of this polish. Like we're not presenting in front of like a room full of 60,000 people in a stadium, right? Like people want to hear the nitty gritty. People want to hear the real stories. And I think, you know, connecting with people genuinely and authentically is by keeping it casual.
Absolutely.
And when we do present in front of 60,000 people, I will wear one of those fire helmets.
Oh, you heard it here first.
Heck yeah.
I'm writing that down.
Yeah, sure. Okay, it's going to be a few years.
Bricks and mortar, baby.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today. We really do appreciate it, and for sharing so much to unpack. And we'll put the social links in the episode description. I guess that's what it's called. Show notes. Let's see, Kyle, you should be in production. You should fire your producer.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And,
thank you guys.
Yeah, absolute pleasure having you on. So thank you.
Thank you guys.
Yep. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Investories Podcast.